Welcome back, everybody, to the PFN Dallas Cowboys podcast. I'm Jess Navarez alongside my co-host, Dalton Miller. Dalton, we are officially in our Victory Tuesday era because after a 40-0 shutout against the New York Giants, there's no way that Victory Monday doesn't carry over to Tuesday. Am I right?
It has to. I mean, the celebration is going to last for a couple more days, until we start to really get ready for the Jets. But with recent happenings, it seems like that might not quite be the game that we thought it was going to be when we had it circled on our schedules.
Yeah, we'll get into all of that. We're going to talk a little New York Giants game. We're going to talk a little New York Jets preview. A lot of New York conversations here within this podcast, but let's get right to it. We don't want to keep the people waiting for what they want, all the good stuff. Let's start with one of my favorite segments that we do on this podcast every week because I never know what I'm going to get. It's kind of like very Forrest Gump-esque with a box of chocolates when it comes to your hot or not take of the week, because I just don't know what I'm going to get. When I log into the rundown, I'm like, what is Dalton going to give us this week? So Dalton Miller, what is your hot or not take as we go into week 2 of the 2023 NFL season?
I would like everybody to know that I'm 31 years old. I was born in 1992. So I was born right before the 3 Super Bowls in 4 seasons. This is the most complete Dallas Cowboys team of my lifetime. And that includes when I was a child. So that means that I believe this is the best Cowboys team that we have seen, or the most complete Cowboys team that we have seen since that Super Bowl era. So when I look at this roster, as long as there aren't major health issues throughout the course of the season, as long as they stay relatively healthy, with the way that the NFC looks, Philadelphia Eagles didn't look super sharp offensively. 49ers are obviously the boogeyman for the Dallas Cowboys. But this new offense that Dallas is running, I think, is going to be better suited against that 49ers defense. And I think that the Dallas Cowboys defensive line is actually a very good matchup against San Francisco's offensive line. When I watched the game back last night, there was nothing Daniel Jones could do. The receivers were not open. The Dallas Cowboys secondary was too good. The defensive line absolutely annihilated that offensive line. I've never seen pressure like that in my life. Daniel Jones is going to get a lot of crap this week, but there's nothing he could have done to fix that. So it's just an absolutely complete team from top to bottom. And again, I said it last week, you have to give a ton of credit to Jerry, Stephen Jones, Chris Hall. I mean, the guys, Wanye Thomas, Marquise Bell, like these dudes are undrafted free agents from last year who have come in and are playing legitimately great football in the secondary. We don't have Dono back yet. Like, this is an incredibly well-built roster.
Absolutely. And I wish I had a little applause sound to add there because you are correct. And the thing about it is, you can talk the talk all offseason. And obviously every team is going to do that across the NFL during training camp, during preseason. It's kind of the same spiel every time, right? It's we're preparing. This is the best team. We hear that all the time. But until you actually see it, it's kind of just lip service. And so what I love about what the Dallas Cowboys have done is not only have they not they've yet to prove otherwise that what they're saying is wrong, but they also exceeded expectations at the same time, because obviously you knew this team was going to be good, but you didn't know that it essentially felt like that defense picked up right where they left off and somehow again continue to get even better within year 3 under Dan Quinn's scheme. So really excited. You mentioned Wanye Thomas and Marquise Bell. They were 2 guys that Mike McCarthy, Dan Quinn, and John Fossil all talked about yesterday in their press conferences, saying just a lot of great things. Marquise Bell is a guy that Dan Quinn says he has those backfield instincts in his DNA. He also said that was initially one of the things that appealed to them that got him in the Cowboys as an undrafted free agent. Wanye Thomas, his special teams work stood out to John Fossil last year. John Fossil was asked, you were a little sheepish in training camp when we asked you about him. And it was pretty cool because Fossil went on to admit that the only reason he was sheepish was because he didn't want to draw attention to Wanye because he didn't want him picked up off the practice squad. He didn't want any reason to lose him. And he said, I was praying for 22 consecutive weeks that this guy would not get poached off the practice squad. So, two really, really good assets, two perfect examples of young guys that are learning within the veteran status that's already in the room. And so, you should be excited. I think that's a great take. And I think it is a complete team. Like you said, injuries aside, this team has potential to go really far this year.
Yeah, and I want to also bring up I'm a historically pessimistic Cowboys person. That's just kind of the way it is when you are 30 years old and you have never really seen postseason success. I mean, I obviously don't remember what happened in the early 90s. So for me to feel this way and to feel this good about this team, it's either going to set up for complete and utter heartbreak or it's going to be the best season that we've seen from the Dallas Cowboys since 94.
Absolutely. And I just want to point out that I was born in 1995. And so I just think it would be really cool, right? That born the last year of the Cowboys Super Bowl, the first year I actually get to cover them. Look, to be determined. I'm just saying that would be really cool. I'd obviously be my dad's favorite child at that point too. So we love that. But let's go over this New York Giants game because not only was it a complete shutdown, 40-0, it was historic. And that seems dramatic, but it wasn't. It was historic for many reasons. Let's talk about it because the 40-point win was the second largest margin of a victory in a season opener for the Cowboys in team history. The only other larger margin of the victory was back in 1968 when who was it? I think it was they won against Detroit 59-13. So look, nearly 20 points off, but can you really complain when you score 40 points in a rain game, Dalton? I need to absolutely emphasize rain game. I mean, it's almost hard to believe that there was even rain during this game, and it was coming down harder than what you even saw on TV from the people I talked to that were there. Something that was interesting that I picked up out of Mike McCarthy's press conference yesterday was he talked about their rain plan and how they had a rain plan set, right? Pretty much every team in the NFL has a rain plan if they think it's going to be a rain game. And 2 days before the game, they actually started doing wet ball drills. However, Mike McCarthy admitted, he said, I didn't feel like that was enough. I felt like we should have done it 3 days. When I looked back, I kind of had regrets about not doing more of those. However, I think the Cowboys prepared really well. And what I also liked is that he talked about adjusting the game plan when they were in the game and the rain started to come down a little harder. He talked about that yesterday on Girls Talk Boys Talk. Christy Skills on the podcast, she talked about how they went and they changed Dak's helmet because a lot of the rain droplets were not wiping off of his face mask there, so he actually had to go and change his gear. So they were adjusting accordingly because of that rain plan, and I think that's so important when you have an offense that's comfortable enough to be adjusting on the fly compared to what you had last season.
Yeah, and just some of the things that they did offensively was a lot of fun to watch. Obviously, the big play to CD Lamb in the first drive of the game was that the first drive or the second? I think that was the second drive, right?
I think it
Where
was second. Yeah.
yeah, the second drive of the game where they went trips left and ran a little bit of a pick play for him. That was nice. You're seeing some stuff that is going to be used later when it comes to seeing this team play against man coverage teams like the New York Giants are, like Wink Martindale's defense likes to run quite a bit. There were a few missed opportunities on plays, or not missed opportunities, but unable to kind of get maybe the look that they wanted from the pass rush, and Dak wasn't really able to come back to some stuff. You're going to see a lot of things that they kind of kept under wraps as well in that game because of the way that the game went. They didn't have to show everything. It is going to be a lot of fun to see how this offense grows, because I do think when I look back on the tape, I don't think Dak was super sharp. And it's, probably because the rain was coming down a little bit harder than we kind of thought that it was. That obviously made Daniel Jones' life really, really rough when it comes to the pass rush as well. So I think just a little bit sloppy game overall, but I think that the offense overall looked really sharp.
Yeah, and look, I think At some point, I just felt bad that Daniel Jones was still in there, and I understand the sentiment of you don't wanna give
Mm.
up and you're not giving up, but at some point, like, man, it's not worth risking,
There
especially in the
was
rain when the turf was that wet.
no excuse for him to be on that field when they were down 40 to nothing.
It was bad. It was bad. But let's go over that. Let's go over what the defense was able to do. And then I want to circle back to some other things that you mentioned about the offense. But first, this goes without saying. The defense was dominating this game. Two interceptions, one for Deron Bland, which thank you, Trayvon Diggs, for that pass breakup that led to that. Welcome to the Dallas Cowboys, Stephon Gilmore with the second interception of the night. 7 sacks total, ladies and gents. Seven. Two for Osa, two for Dorrance Armstrong, one for Micah, one for Chauncey Goldston, and one for Demarcus Lawrence. And then, of course, you have the Wanye Thomas blocked kick, which led to the Noah Igbenogany touchdown. And yeah, I learned how to say that. I have a feeling that I'm going to be saying that a little bit more after what he was able to do, scoring the Cowboys' first touchdown of the 2023 season. Very cool stuff to see there. Um, Going back to what you said about the Cowboys offense, I want to talk about that because, yeah, I really don't think we got to see the full extent of what this Cowboys offense is because of the rain. And, I thought it was funny. Mike McCarthy admitted second quarter, he said, I wasn't ready to stop playing. I wasn't ready to pull anybody out yet. They had like, what, 20 plus lead at that point. Giants had yet to score. And he said, I wasn't ready to stop playing. Our guys needed the play time because keep in mind, they hadn't played a snap until the start of that game. Their starters did not play in the preseason. So he admitted, wasn't ready to sit him yet. And he also said something that was interesting because he was asked in the press conference about his decision to go long to Michael Gallup in the start of the second half. I believe it was a third down pass. Michael Gallup doesn't get it. However, he was asked about that play call because I believe it was a 3rd and 4. Why go deep downfield? He said he likes to do a couple of things. He likes to go score when they're coming in and then score when they're coming out. So, what does that mean? That means Mike McCarthy knew right before the half they wanted to score. Going out into the second quarter, they had the ball again. So he wanted to ensure that they secured, a score both going into the half and then coming out of it as well. So I thought that was interesting. But overall, Dalton, what did you notice about this Texas Coast offense? And given this was a rain version of it, what did you notice? Any differences in what you saw and how they were playing?
I thought that there was a little bit less when it came to the intermediate passing game. I thought that they really did a good job of trying to get the ball out of Dak Prescott's hands, and that might not be as much the West. I mean, obviously the West Coast principles are a lot more quick game, getting the ball out and into the hands of your playmakers in space. That's kind of the way that the West Coast offense operates or wants to operate. You see it in San Francisco, you see it in Miami, and oh my gosh, that Miami offense is unbelievable. But anyways, I think that what I noticed most was just that this rushing attack, when they run it to the right side, it's over for defenses. Zach Martin and Terrence Steele are absolute dogs on the right side of that offensive line. I thought Tyler did a pretty good job as well in the middle, going up against some of those hosses that New York has on the defensive line. I mean, I really thought we talked about it in the preview episode that was going to be a massive matchup for them, and I thought that they did a really good job. But I think more than anything, it was getting the ball into the hands of playmakers quickly. You saw Cavante Turpin in the backfield. You saw them trying to, there was the one Tony Pollard touchdown where they lined up in shotgun and then Dak quickly went under center to get that ball into his hands quicker and to get that pitch out quicker as well and give him time and space to be patient and find that gap on the run. So I thought that it was cool to see them really working to get the ball in the hands of playmakers and take some of the pressure off of Dak having to make plays.
Yeah, I also really liked the fast pace that Mike McCarthy was
Yeah,
working under
there was
with the
some
play
pace.
calling. It was a faster pace. And overall, look, was it Dak Prescott's best game? Absolutely not. But here's what I did like about it. He looked comfortable again. And that's not something you've seen out of Dak Prescott in a long time, especially given how the season ended last year. You haven't seen Dak Prescott play with his shoulders down and just able to play football. And that sounds so simple. But what I liked, Jerry Jones talked on 105.3 The Fan this morning. We're recording on Tuesday morning. And Jerry talked about, what Dak Prescott was able to do during this game, or what he didn't have to do, rather, because he said that the goal was to cut down what Dak had to do at the line of scrimmage. And he said, quote, boy, he was loaded. And he absolutely was. So what he mentioned, which I thought was interesting, was that the offensive line is actually doing a little bit more as far as calling out what needs to be done as opposed to Dak Prescott. And I think that showed, and I think that made him play even better because of it. So if this is your starting line, I'm really excited for that. And that should give you a good indicator on what you're going to see develop throughout the rest of the season as well. Dalton, let's switch gears. Let's talk a little bit of special teams real quick because I am a special teams truther. I absolutely love this part of the game. I think it's so underrated, and I know you're smirking. If people can't see you, Dalton's giving me those eyes, but I have somewhere to go with this, I promise. Couple things I wanted to mention. John Fossil talked yesterday about how Jalen Tolbert is your team starting gunner, and he's taking really that Noah Brown role in this season. And he said JT has worked hard for it. He deserves it. And mind you, this is a guy that has not done any special teams work really up until this point. So that tells you how hard Jalen Tolbert has worked to get this opportunity. Did you see Jalen Tolbert just absolutely annihilating in special teams? Did you notice that off the bat? I'm going to be honest, I didn't. I had to go back and look for it. And if you haven't seen it yet, please go look for it. Jalen Tolbert, he didn't have a very productive game in the offense. I don't think that was anything Jalen Tolbert-esque. I think that was rain game plan, lack of opportunity, and that's not something you're really going to see much of throughout the course of the season. But I'm so excited for him, so I had to give that mention. Speaking of special teams, Brandon Aubrey, he did miss one of the extra point attempts, and they did talk about that as well. But Dalton, are you worried about Brandon Aubrey? And I know that it's so nitpicky to be going over these things when the Cowboys won 40-0, right? But are you worried? How are you feeling about Brandon Aubrey?
I mean, yeah, if I don't have Justin Tucker or Daniel Carlson or Harrison Butker, I'm pretty worried about kicking. It doesn't matter who else it is. It's just, I don't trust much of anybody outside of those guys. So that's where I think I'm at with it. I'm always going to be uneasy. It's like when Dak Prescott runs the football. I'm gonna get a little queasy every time Dak Prescott takes off and runs past the line of scrimmage because I have PTSD from the ankle, just like I have PTSD from watching Brett Maher miss 5 consecutive kicks and have this team really not have a consistent kicker since Dan Bailey left the team. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it. I'm always going to be a little bit concerned about kicker, but that's just the way that it goes.
Something we were talking about before we started recording, and I keep alluding back to this Jerry Jones conversation. It just happened, so it's still kind of fresh in the mind. But they asked him about his reaction when he was talking about the missed kick, and it was a funny moment. So don't take this out of context when I explain it. Go back and listen to it because it's gonna sound worse when I say it than when Jerry said it. They asked him, "What was your reaction?" He said, "Dang it, I thought." Dang, Steven, you don't know how to pick a kicker. My words, not his, but he basically alluded to the fact that he looked at Steven with a bit of a side eye to be like, that's your guy? But then he turned around really quickly, and then he said, after the way Brandon Aubrey played in the rain and the way that he was able to perform after that and kind of recover quickly, he said, yep, that was our guy, and we have ourselves a kicker. So to me, hearing Jerry talk, hearing the front office talk, there's something about Brandon Aubrey that I think we don't get to see because we really don't get to see a lot of what the kickers do, right? We see them for a total of probably less than 5 minutes in a game, if that. And the thing about Brandon Aubrey is they've pointed out before that he has professional experience. So he knows how to maintain that composure, which I think is a very underappreciated part of what he does. yeah, he's still learning. At the end of the day, he's still learning. But what I think they're really hopeful for is that once you get out of this learning phase, you have yourself a guy like Dan Bailey eventually. And I don't think they're going to budge on this Brandon Aubrey pick at all. I think Brandon Aubrey is your guy, and we'll see. We'll see where the course of the year takes us. But yeah, I liked his composure. I liked his comeback from that. And they talked about what happened with the missed kick, that he was timing a little too fast, and he was used to the preseason timing as compared to the regular season where it's a little bit slower. You have a little bit more time to go out there and kick. And John Fossil said for him, it was really just a learning experience that he's going to learn from. So one other thing I want to mention, tight ends. That's a room I'm really high on, and it was kind of a double edged sword for them because yes, there were some drop balls, but also hello blocking abilities. That was absolutely incredible to see where their starting point is for their blocking game. But do the drop balls concern you at all? I mean, is there any ounce of concern in your body with that?
I think that excuse me. I think that you can be concerned a little bit with Peyton Hendershot and the drops, just because that's something that we noticed in training camp and something that even showed up a little bit last year as well. The highs are really high with him, but the lows are also pretty low. I think when you look at Fergie, I think Fergie's going to be all right. I just a little bit of a tough night, bad conditions. He missed a couple of big opportunities. Obviously, there was the one in the end zone that was a great throw from Dak. That's one that you really want him to come down with. But you're right. The one thing that really stood out outside of that was their ability blocking in the run game. So you can be happy with that, especially because this is a team that, yeah, they'll probably throw it around and get the ball out of Dak's hands quickly and get it to playmakers, but they want to run the ball too. This is the Dallas Cowboys, and there's nothing Jerry and Stephen Jones want more than for this offense to mimic those offenses from the early 90s. That's what they want. That's what they've always wanted. So I think when you look at it, watching how good they were blocking for the run game, I think that you can be excited about that.
Also, speaking of the run game, shout out to Tony Pollard for returning after 6 months of rehabbing after a broken leg and a high ankle injury. I mean, the man really worked to come back. Excuse me, we have frogs in our throat. Dalton, we're just at a loss for words now. But he really worked to come back and look like he didn't skip a beat. I mean, you wouldn't know that Tony Pollard had a season-ending injury at the end of the season. He looked great. And my question to you about that, real quick, is do you think this game gave an indication of the ball distribution that you're going to see between him and Rico Dowdle, or even Deuce Vaughn, Hunter Lipke? There's four guys in your mix here that you can really throw around, but do you think this gave you an indication, or was this more rain game plan esque as far as the run game?
I think it was a decent indication. I think that they really want to kind of lean on Tony Pollard and then bring those guys in to spell him. I still think Tony Pollard is probably at his best when he can remain fully at 100% because his explosiveness is really his trump card. And when you're on the field for 65, 70% of the snaps, you're going to be a little bit more tired. I think that there was one run in particular yesterday where I thought, oh, he's gone. And he wasn't gone. And it's not because he's lost a step from his injury. It's because he was just on the field a lot more than he normally is. And I think when you look back on what Skip Pete said last year about him and Ezekiel Elliott, like we all knew it by that point that Tony Pollard was the better running back. But I think he made a good point about Tony being at his best, being on the field for 30 to 40 snaps a game instead of 60. So I think that he's still going to be effective. I think that he's still one of the most elusive backs in the NFL, but I think you might miss out on some of the super explosive plays if he is playing a higher snap count. But I liked what I saw from Rico when he was in there. I think that he might benefit from a little bit more patience sometimes, but the angry running is something that Mike McCarthy has brought up a couple of times with him, and that's my favorite part about watching Rico play.
I'm telling you, I have this handy dandy notebook if you guys can't see it. And this has all my notes going back from minicamp to OTAs, uh, training camp. I have just notes and notes and notes in here that I like to go back to. sometimes. But it's also my game day notebook. So I just have a little Bible, if you will, of all my notes throughout the course of this. And I kid you not, when I go back to training camp and I go back to even OTAs, mini camp, I have Rico Dowdle just underlined with stars next to his name, which in my brain means remember this name, remember this guy and what he's doing right now. He's been somebody that has impressed me since he was able to get back on the field. And really, the only downfall of what Rico's career has been so far has been injury and has been staying healthy. But when I've talked to him about it, he said that he's really changed how he takes care of his body now and how he manages his body after a game, after practice, to make sure that those soft tissue injuries won't be an issue for him. And so I think if you can continue to see a healthy Rico Dowdle, you're going to continue to see eventually, maybe not as strong as a 1-2 punch as you saw with Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, but you're going to get to see kind of a new version of that. I don't think it's going to be as prominent as it was because you had to have it that way with Zeke and kind of how he was playing. But I think you still get it back at some point, eventually, right? I think Rico Dowdle was the perfect person to take that spot in that running back 2 position. I'm really excited for him. So with that, let's switch gears. Let's talk injuries because the Dallas Cowboys had some guys sit out during this game that I don't think we were shocked by. I think the only one I was a little surprised by was Jordan Lewis more than anybody, because he's been a full go at practice. So I was a little surprised to see it, but also at the same time, with how Mike McCarthy treats injuries with a ramp up phase, not really. So we'll keep an eye on that. But as far as Tyler Smith, Donovan Wilson, and Jordan Lewis, Jerry Jones talked about it on the fan, and he said that all of these guys are on the cusp of playing. It's just going to depend on how they practice throughout the week and then how much practice time that they do get. So we're going to keep a very close eye on that. He mentioned Dono specifically. He said specifically the safety. That tells you he wants Dono back. He is just itching to get Dono back, as I think everybody really is when it comes to that deep safety room. I'm not concerned about how Dono will look coming back from that calf injury. It's just unfortunate that we haven't seen more of him. He got injured the first day of training camp, which is really hard to believe that he hasn't gotten any practice time. But injuries, Dalton, they happen. And unfortunately, last night it was a good reminder of how quickly things can happen within this game. Aaron Rodgers, I don't think anybody was expecting that Monday night game to go as it did. And Aaron Rodgers, with a reported Achilles injury, we don't know the extent of it so far from official reports. So just kind of waiting to see what it is. It's bad though when your head coach comes out after the game to say it's not good, and it's not good. Period. So yeah, Aaron Rodgers. We don't know, but we can only speculate that if it's as bad as they're thinking, obviously he wouldn't play for this weekend's game against the Dallas Cowboys, which changes the course of the game and how everybody has to prepare going forward for the Jets. But Dalton, when you saw that game, it was what 4 plays into the game, and Aaron Rodgers goes down, and I didn't realize he got injured as bad as he did because he stood up and then he kind of just looked a little weird. I thought like why does he look like that? And then he sat down and you could tell something was wrong. You could just see it in his eyes. He walked to the medical tent and then he was carted from the medical tent back to the locker room, where at that point they said he was taken for x-rays. X-rays came back clear, which gave you an indication he needs an MRI, which is worse typically with those kind of situations. He was seen in a walking boot, and then we know the rest is history. How does this change the course of the Jets season in general? We won't even get to the Cowboys matchup yet. How does this change the course of the Jets season now with Zach Wilson?
This is devastating. There's no there's just no good way to talk about it, because this is a team that was legitimately last year a quarterback away from being a legitimate contender in the AFC. And you saw it immediately when he stood up and he shook his head and he went back down and they panned that camera over to Robert Saleh. You could see that stare was the 1,000-yard stare. That was the shell shock from a guy coming home. And It's really unfortunate because this is a team that obviously no team was covered like this offseason. They traded for Aaron Rodgers. They hit a home run, McCovey Cove, Barry Bonds type home run to get the quarterback that they wanted. And then they lose him 4 plays into the season. And now Salah is staring down the barrel of a 17-game season with Zach Wilson, who was supposed to be sitting in the shadows this year and learning. And, I tweeted it out right after, kind of everything happened. Like, I didn't love Zach Wilson coming out of BYU. I thought that he had a ton of flaws. You've seen those flaws in the NFL, but it would be really cool to see him get back up on his feet and play well. But when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Jets, that young man does not stand a chance because even with Aaron Rodgers, it would have been tough for that offensive line because I didn't think that the offensive line played particularly well. Now, those plays early on with Aaron Rodgers were interesting because I saw linemen cut blocking, and usually cut blocks mean 1-step drop, 3-step drop, get the ball out immediately. And Aaron Rodgers wasn't doing that. So there must have been something in the coverage, and I don't have the all 22 yet, that got him off of that and made him hold on to the football. And that's eventually what got him hurt because the play that got him hurt, that left tackle, Dwayne Brown, cut block. And you had a free rusher after that. And it's tough to see. You obviously want to go up against their best, especially in a situation like this, but especially when it's Aaron Rodgers, who has done so many horrible things to the Dallas Cowboys over the years. So it's tough to see that happen. But I think at the end of the day, it's tough for the players for me because this is a team in the Jets that were incredibly excited about the season they were going to undergo. And I can't imagine especially what that defense is feeling and what Garrett Wilson is feeling right now. Because that defense, much like the Dallas Cowboys, filled with stars. Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Whitehead obviously had like 75 interceptions last night. They have the defensive line rotation, much like the Dallas Cowboys do. They fly to the football. There was no defense, and I love the Dallas Cowboys defense, but watching last year, there was no defense that flew to the football the way that the New York Giants or the New York Jets defense did. And I can't imagine how they're feeling today, knowing Zach Wilson is the quarterback on the opposite side of the ball for them.
It was almost chilling, how they won that game in overtime and the reaction that they got and how happy they were because you just know that after that moment, it was going to set in what reality was gonna be for the rest of their season. And, yeah, I mean, you saw it on Hard Knocks. You really got to see this entire journey play out. It's a storyline that really took over since the end of last season. Was as soon as Aaron Rodgers was done in Green Bay, it was that his last game in Green Bay, and the Jets got him. They built the entire team around him. Aaron Rodgers has just been the top one of the top conversations this entire offseason. So for this, it's devastating. And for a guy like Aaron Rodgers, which yes, as Cowboys fans and somebody who grew up a Cowboys fan, he is the boogeyman. He is the boogeyman for the Dallas Cowboys. But man, my heart hurts for him. It really, really sucks that you possibly don't get to see what this year could have looked like for him because everything was in place for him to have a successful season and to be that boogeyman-esque kind of guy once again, starting anew in New York. So yeah, definitely sad for him, and we're going to continue to wait and see what the official reports are going to be. But again, just it doesn't look good. And anytime you have your starting quarterback go down, there is a shell shock that comes over you and the entire team. But I am glad that they were able to rally back, get the win, and win in the way they did. That was insane. And, like I said, I don't think anybody expected that Monday night game to go like it did for many reasons. But now that you have Zach Wilson in the pocket and what it seems like is going to be probably for a longer term here, how does that change the matchup between the Dallas Cowboys, the Jets offensive line, which was struggling a lot yesterday, and Zach Wilson now? How does that change what your matchup kind of looks like? How do the Dallas Cowboys have to adjust a little bit more? And what are their best odds to kind of bully that offensive line that looked shaky during Monday night's game?
It'll be a lot of the same game plan as what we saw against the Giants. You were going to go from a guy who, in Aaron Rodgers, loves to get the ball out quickly. So coverage was going to be a bigger factor in that game than it would have been with Daniel Jones, because Daniel Jones will hold on to the ball a little bit longer. There will be a lot more play action, bootlegs, things of that nature to get Daniel Jones out and allow him to use his athleticism. And I thought that the Dallas Cowboys did an amazing job at taking what Brian Dabble and Mike Kafka like to do and use it against them in that first game. So I think it's going to be a lot of the same in New York. Zach Wilson does not get the ball out quickly. Zach Wilson does not see the field very well. And Zach Wilson loves to try to create, and he will run backwards 30 yards to throw a 5-yard pass. So you're going to see a lot of opportunities for this Dallas Cowboys defense that is already like a shark with chum in the water. They're going to attack, and they are going to get a few more turnovers. This is a team who has the most turnovers by like 10 over the past 2 seasons, and that's going to continue this year. I think they've gotten even more aggressive when it comes to going after the ball, and I think that they're able to be more aggressive with going after the football because they don't have that question at CB2 anymore. They don't have any questions at safety or linebacker. I mean, this is a complete team, and even if one guy gets a little bit aggressive and is a little bit out of position, they have the confidence that somebody else is going to be in position. You saw Trayvon Diggs get beat a little bit. And as soon as he got beat on that inbreaker, I knew Trayvon Diggs was going to punch that football. And, maybe they don't get the fumble every single time, but that's the type of attitude that this defense has. They're going to try to take the ball away, and they are darned good at it.
And what I like about it too is you have playmakers, and people use that term so much that you also forget that a playmaker can be somebody that sets the guys up around them for plays and success, right? Mike McCarthy was talking about how in a game, typically you see about 35 big plays. The Cowboys were 21 plus in those big plays throughout the entirety of the game. And I'm talking that those 35 big plays come from both teams. And so he said that that's the largest margin he's ever been a part of within his coaching tenure. And I think that's a large part of those playmakers. You have Micah Parsons that, maybe he doesn't have all of the sacks on record, but you look at what he was doing to set up some of those bigger plays, some of those interceptions. He was right there bullying Daniel Jones. So I expect to see a lot of that too with Zach Wilson. Let's talk the other side of the ball, because what I think will be interesting is to see how the Cowboys offense will go against the Jets defense, because the Jets defense, like you said, star-studded, and obviously a little bit more of a competition than what the Giants were giving the Cowboys, especially not being a rain game and especially being back at AT&T Stadium. What matchups are you looking for from the Cowboys offense and then the Jets defense?
All of it. Honestly, all of it. I think that this is going to be
Period.
this is going to be one of the most fun matchups in week 2 of the NFL season, because we want to see the Dallas Cowboys offense be able to elevate from what they were last year. And last year they weren't a bad offense. They obviously scored like 29 points a game with Dak Prescott playing quarterback for them. But I think what you really want to see is them have answers on the fly when teams are taking away what they want to do, what their game plan was. And obviously you can't just completely do a 180 from your game plan. There's a reason why you do it. But I think to have those built-in answers if things aren't working out in the passing attack is going to be huge for them. Now, like I said, Michael Carter II is a fantastic slot option for them. They have 2 decent safeties. They have 2 cornerbacks on the outside, and Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, who are some of the best in the game. And then you have just an absolute murderer's row of pass rushers that goes 5 or 6 deep. It is really a strong team overall, not to mention the linebackers who are also playmakers. Quincy Williams, one of the best examples of nepotism ever. Got a deal because his brother is the star on that defense in the middle. And it worked out because, coming from Jacksonville, he was just kind of an all right player. He's been outstanding. CJ Mosley is a massive playmaker for them on the second level. It's just a very good defense. They're very well coached. They don't do anything like that is super complex, but I think a lot of teams have gone to more complex defenses, and it actually slows down a super talented group like this. You saw it with the Cleveland Browns last year. They were trying to do a lot of match stuff in the secondary. They weren't just letting their star athletes be star athletes, and I think that that's something that Robert Saleh does really well. He lets his guys think fast and react fast, and I think that's what makes them so dangerous overall.
Absolutely. So even with Zach Wilson presumably being the starting quarterback going forward, it's still a tough matchup
Yeah,
regardless. It's not a sleeper game by any means. This, Aaron Rodgers being potentially out. And I'm saying potentially because there's nothing official yet saying otherwise. So I'm trying to steer very clear with my wording here and trying to be, just as professional as I can be with that. But it doesn't change that it's still a matchup and it's still a game that the Cowboys need to win. And for me personally, Dalton, when I saw all of the Aaron Rodgers news starting to come out and my mind started going to, okay, well, is this going to impact next week? And then when you obviously kind of see the dominoes falling as they are, and you see that it likely will, I thought there's more pressure on the Cowboys to win this game than if Aaron Rodgers was in the game. Because, look, let's face it, Aaron Rodgers, boogeyman for the Dallas Cowboys, and they have not been able to pull an upset on Aaron Rodgers pretty much ever, right? So, to me, if they lost that game, it was okay, well, Aaron Rodgers is still the boogeyman. It is what it is. Move on. For this game, with Zach Wilson in now, you don't really have that to fall back onto. You don't have that as anything. That's more pressure to me to win this game. If I'm the Dallas Cowboys, to say, look, man, we really can't come out and let this guy beat us, especially after what we did with the Giants the week before. So it's not an excuse to let up by any means. And I don't think, they're going to. I think as soon as that plane landed, right back from MetLife Stadium, they were ready to go for the Jets, no matter who was in. I just think they were expecting, obviously, a bit of a different game, as everybody was as well. I go back to just yesterday in the press conference. Mike McCarthy was talking about how excited he was for Aaron Rodgers. It's actually, again, very chilling. He was asked about it, and they said, we know we're only Monday, but we want to talk about the Jets and, kind of Aaron Rodgers and you being able to face him again. And McCarthy said he's really excited. He said that he has talked to Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron knew how excited Mike was for this new chapter for him. Just heartbreaking all around, man, when you go back and look at it. But the work doesn't stop. Week 2 for the Dallas Cowboys, New York Jets, back home at AT&T Stadium, sure to be a good one no matter what. And obviously, we're going to keep you posted with all of the latest news and then run down the game next week, as we usually do here on the podcast. Dalton, before we go, a couple of things. Any last things you want to throw out for game predictions for this game? And I just didn't even ask you who gets your PFNBP for the week for week 1 for the Dallas Cowboys. So, loaded question, I know. And I forgot to tell you about that sooner. So, I'm putting him on the spot, guys. This is Dalton Miller on the spot.
I got it. Give me Marquise Bell. He was just everywhere on defense. He was fantastic in the box. You're right. The playmaking instincts are there. I'm really excited to see how he's able to grow kind of alongside Leighton Vander Esch this season.
Period. Look at you. That was
Quick,
good. I
quick.
love that for you.
Yeah,
My PF MVP for the week 1 of the 2023 season, I am going to be as basic as I can be with this. Micah Parsons. I'm giving it to Micah. And usually I'm not going to go the basic answer. This one, it's the basic answer, but it's the correct answer. He is somehow better than he was last season, and you can see all of the offseason work that he's put in. He's quick, he's fast, his instincts just absolutely shine when it comes to finding the ball. He sets other guys up for success. He is your fearless leader on the defensive side of the ball. So Micah Parsons, can't go wrong when you answer with Micah. But Dalton, that is all the time we have left. Where can the people find you if they want to tweet you if they agree with your hot or not take. Although I don't imagine that if they're listening to this podcast, they disagree with it. But if they want to, where can they find you?
Dalton B. Miller on Twitter.
We love that. Go tweet Dalton. I'm at Jess Navarez _ on Twitter or X, whatever it is these days. Thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate your support each and every week. We're going to be back here next week with even more Dallas Cowboys talk. We're talking all about what happens against the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Jets, what the Dallas Cowboys will be up to in the next week or so. We'll have all of that and more. Again, thank you guys so much. We appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you real soon.